If 1 or 2 people had the same dream, one could call it an oddity, said Wu Wang. But if several people have the same dream at the same time, even calling it miraculous would not explain it away. In addition, this dream was no ordinary sort. It was incredibly realistic, and upon waking, one felt that even the waking world was not as real as that of the dream. All the cultivators present who had reached core formation or greater empathized with this description. Their hearts still palpitated at the memory, and they all nodded in agreement. Why was this Tianlang dream sealed? One person asked, confused. If he really was so horrific, how was he overcome last time? Master Wu Chen sighed. The tale truly is an injustice. If the palace master of Huanghua Palace were here today, who knows how greatly he would lament. The palace master of Huanghua Palace? A woman said, surprised. What does this have to do with Luo Binghe? Her voice was clear, crisp, and charming, melodious like a warbler's song, and Shen Qingqiu turned to look at the sound. The one who spoke was a slender and beautiful Taoist nun from Tianyi Temple. Shen Qingqiu couldn't tell exactly which one she was, because there were 3 Taoist nuns who looked like they had been carved from the same mold, from their faces to their figures and attire. Standing together, they looked like 3 bright and lovely blue flowers. Even their faces wore identical expressions of strange, unspeakable excitement. That's right, it was definitely excitement. Ah, the triplet sisters from the original Bingge's harem. Long time no see, harem members. Before, Shen Qingqiu would definitely have been beyond himself with excitement. Then he would have begun envisioning the passage to follow, where the protagonist bedded his women, all while hypocritically roasting airplay shooting towards the sky. But now, Luo Binghe lowered his voice to its quietest, but the sourness in his tone wafted as far as 10 kilometers away. Shizhōng, are they pretty? Ah, forget it! Shen Qingqiu looked back away. The plot had been changed into something unrecognizable, and those 3 Taoist nuns hadn't become Luo Binghe's extraction vessels. At this time, they shouldn't have been acquainted with Luo Binghe, yet they still showed interest in news about him. Shen Qingqiu automatically assumed the excitement on their faces was a first stirring of affection. Luo Binghe's stallion powers were still going strong. Amitofo, Buddha. The palace master I speak of is a previous one, said Master Wu Wang. That Luo Binghe merely used underhanded methods to usurp the seat of leadership. By what merits has he earned recognition as palace master from the masses? Luo Binghe raised his eyebrow and twisted his lips in disdain. Master Wu Wang continued. But indeed, the real story cannot escape association with Huanghua Palace. Tens of years ago, the head disciple under the old palace master's tutelage was named Su Xiyan. Shen Qingqiu's spirits picked up at this. At this rate, they were about to unravel the riddles of Luo Binghe's origins. This woman had unparalleled talent, was keen and intelligent, and was decisive in her actions. With a lordly presence, the old palace master especially loved and valued this direct disciple of his, and he saw her as the apple of his eye. The entire sect tacitly recognized her as the next master of Huanghua Palace. No matter where he went, he ordered Su Xiyan to accompany him and serve at his side. He regarded her most highly. Shen Qingqiu recalled the old palace master's blank-eyed, drooly appearance in the holy mausoleum and thought to himself, did he see her as a pearl in his palm or slab of meat for his exclusive use? Not a sound was heard in the hall of great strength except for Master Wu Wang's resonant voice. One day, the old palace master and Su Xiyan accepted a request to subdue a monstrous beast. On the way back to the palace, they passed through an old city at the lower reaches of the Luo River. Demons and monsters were on a rampage, and the few survivors remained in the surrounding cities. But while investigating, Su Xiyan met a young man traveling alone. The young man had a unique presence, and his features and the colors of his skin were extraordinary, and he sat below a draping willow, playing and singing a song. Such a character should not have appeared in such a location at such a time, and Su Xiyan immediately sensed something strange. After exchanging a few questions, she became certain this person was peculiar, that he was definitely no common sort. Shen Qingqiu was engrossed by this tale, so Tianlangjun really had been a youth of literature who loved the human world's poems, songs, and prose since he was young. And what was the most terrifying variety of such youths? The kind that was both cultured and handsome. The following script was very easy to predict. As long as his singing wasn't too much of a letdown, love at first sight was definitely at hand. Who knew that the plot would take an abrupt turn for the worse, slapping him right across the face? Su Xiyan immediately reported this to her Shizun. The old palace master was more alarmed the more he thought about it. As the youth showed interest in Su Xiyan, conversation came easily to them. So the old palace master decided to meet like with like. He commanded her to approach the youth and investigate his background. Su Xiyan was quite adept at this, and she easily discovered that this man was a leader of the demon nobility, the one who had united both the northern and southern territories, Tianlangjun. Shen Qingqiu had thought it would be boy meets girl and girl meets boy. He never imagined it would be fantasy, infernal affairs. It wasn't the overused trope of, quote, tall, dark, and deadly demonic saintly ruler meets pure and charming little white flower, unquote. It was actually, quote, pure and naive ruler who doesn't know the treachery of the human heart steps out into the world for the first time and meets the pillar of a righteous sect, a cool and calculating overlord of a flower with a dark side. Shen Qingqiu finally understood what meaning underlay Tianlangjun's wry tone when he'd spoken of Su Xiyan, that half-mocking, half-adoring, quote, cold and heartless, unquote. As the old palace master had Su Xiyan maintain her report with Tianlangjun, he also sent people to follow and observe them in secret. But the disciples he sent always lost them, so the old palace master could only take to the field himself. Finally, his efforts bore fruit, and discovered Tianlangjun's motives for wandering the human realm. For one day, Su Xiyan and Tianlangjun met on Bailu Mountain. There, they sat shoulder to shoulder atop the head of a giant green snake, speaking in low voices. If Shen Qingqiu hadn't guessed wrong, that giant green snake was Zhu Zilang. It could only be Zhu Zilang, whether as a nephew or as a subordinate. Being taken along a date as a cushion was really the most pitiful thing. Afraid to alarm Tianlangjun, the old palace master stopped a distance away, but he faintly overheard their words. Su Xiyan patiently guided the conversation, probing from all sorts of oblique directions, before she finally got Tianlangjun to forget himself for a moment and unintentionally reveal why he had infiltrated the human world. He would bathe the cultivation world in blood and pillage the hidden treasures kept by each sect to build the demon race's might. When the last part was spoken, a tidy chorus of inhales sounded from the crowd, but Shen Qingqiu did a spit take. To be frank, this kind of content, which followed the standard logic of a final boss, just didn't fit Tianlangjun's style. No matter how Shen Qingqiu thought about it, that guy didn't seem very much like the sort of character who'd speak such haughty lines of conquest and wild ambition. In addition, as their supreme ruler, Tianlangjun could enter the demon race's holy mausoleum whenever he wished. That place contained more treasures than one could ever take, let alone use. If he was bored, he could easily set up a booth and play ring toss for fun. Did he really think he would care about the handful of hidden treasures possessed by 4 major sects? In Shen Qingqiu's opinion, this account was full of red flags, but Master Wu Wang continued his account in a flat tone. After obtaining this information, the old palace master immediately informed all the great sects in secret. Tianlangjun and Su Xiyan met at Bailu Mountain 2 times a month, so the sects decided that they would join together to besiege Tianlangjun on the date of their next meeting. As for the rest, that was the Battle of Bailu Mountain. The events of that day would be best told by sect leader Yue, who participated in the fight. Yue Qingyuan nodded. In truth, there is not much to be said about the battle that day. Tianlangjun never expected that he would be met not by Su Xiyan, but a full assault. He only brought one of the demon generals under his command, the one called Zhu Zilang. After being surrounded, he was defeated and captured. If so, their side had won by the unfair advantage of numbers. But Yue Qingyuan gave an honest account and neither hid nor embellished the sequence of events. However, many present had grown up listening to their sect seniors brag about the Battle of Bailu Mountain, so they were hearing the true version for the first time. Some felt awkward, and some were angry. Yue Qingyuan said, "In order to protect this master, Zhu Zilang was struck head-on by my Shizun's spiritual artifact and transformed back into his original shape. He fled as half-snake. Meanwhile, Tianlangjun was sealed beneath Bailu Mountain." So, Zhu Zilang had been blasted into the snake man form he'd worn in the Ju Mountain cave by a bolt of heavenly lightning from the hand of the previous Chongding Peak Lord. With his black and white sense of gratitude and grievances, along with his need to repay every slight. Before Shen Qingqiu could continue thinking about it, the system beeped with a notification. Quest issued. Please help Luo Binghe complete the Zhao Hua Monastery scenario. Objective: raise righteous image points by at least 200. Righteous image points? Shen Qingqiu had a flash of realization. He finally remembered what plot point occurred at Zhao Hua Monastery. To explain this, one must mention Sha Hualing's dad, Jiu Chongjun. After this unfortunate demon noble had been screwed out of his territory by his own treacherous daughter, he wandered about the southern border for some time and gathered a crowd of rabble, hoping to stage a return to power and take revenge on Luo Binghe. But as he was going up against the protagonist's diamond-hard halo, he could forget about accomplishing either one of these beautiful dreams within this lifetime. Jiu Chongjun's plans failed again and again, so, of course, he grew frustrated. And what would he do with this frustration? Find someone else to vent it on, of course. So he decided to make Zhao Hua Monastery this, quote, someone else. Placed next to Sha Hualing's initial attack on Chongding Peak, these actions were curiously similar in essence, despite the different perpetrator. It was the same naive arrogance, the same method of digging their graves. Shen Yuan had roasted it back when he was reading. No wonder they were father and daughter. Their trains of thoughts careened off on the same weird tracks. In the original work, because Jiu Chongjun sent a bunch of miscellaneous fighters to harass the civilians and monks in Zhao Hua Monastery's vicinity, Zhao Hua Monastery held a conference not to deal with Tianlangjun, but to clean up these annoying and dispossessed demons clamoring for attention. But the reason for the conference wasn't important. The important part was that Zhao Hua Monastery was indeed an opportunity for Luo Binghe to farm righteous image points. In the original, Jiu Chongjun's demon underlings infiltrated the human crowd and found every opportunity to cause trouble, wanting to, quote, stick it to those bold donkeys, unquote. Their words. But they had barely a few seconds for mischief before they were beautifully and unconditionally subjugated by Luo Binghe. With such a development, the current Luo Binghe would of course be able to gain some righteous image points. At least he could go from, quote, beyond redemption to, quote, neither black nor white, unquote. Shen Qingqiu discreetly glanced around. Sure enough, he discovered a few people within the crowd whose expressions weren't quite right. Very good, the props were ready to take their place. The three beautiful Taoist nuns had originally been important characters in this section. With the collaborative efforts from Luo Binghe's harem in the original story, the efficiency of his righteous image farming had of course been even higher. But now they had totally become bystanders in the crowd. In conclusion, so the male lead's role was going to Shen Qingqiu again, huh? In that dream, Tianlangjun used a recrafted body to slaughter his way through the human realm, plunging all who lived in utter misery. Wu Wang said severely. This old monk believes that was his threat to us, an omen of his revenge for the Battle of Bailu Mountain. But Tianlangjun's original body has already been destroyed, someone said. Even if he wanted revenge, he shouldn't be anything to fear, right? You mustn't underestimate Tianlangjun, said Wu Wang. The demon race recognizes him as the strongest heir of the heavenly demon bloodline, with no equal across all past generations. In addition, his subordinates include not only his capable and loyal general, Zhu Zilang, who has already recovered his own body, but he also has a son.